Hey Maxleets, today we are going to break down the lunge. I'm going to show you the ways to do it, some variations, and I'm going to show you some things to look out for and be mindful of to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So when you're performing the lunge, here's your positioning. You spread your feet apart. You want to make sure that you're spreading your feet far enough that when you bend, both knees should be at a 90-degree angle. So this is essentially where you want to do your lunge when you come back up. So we're down and we're back up. You notice for the front foot, my foot stays flat on the ground. For the back foot, the heel is up, so I'm on my toes, and both feet are facing forward. I'm not turning my foot out or anything like that. I keep both feet facing forward as I go down and up. As I'm going down and I come back up, although the front foot is flat on the ground, you also want to make sure that you're pushing from your heels or the front leg when you're coming back up. So when I go down, as I push, I'm going to push from the heel to come back up. Down, push from the heel, come back up. When you're pushing or driving from the heel, you'll feel it in the back part here, which is the hamstring. You want to make sure that you're feeling it in the hamstrings and the glutes. You are still going to feel it in your quads because of the nature of the movement, but you want to make sure that you're not putting any of that pressure on the knee. So it is very, very important that when you go down and come up, you push from the heels of the front leg when you're coming up. There are a few variations here. One variation in particular is the placement of the legs, especially the placement of the front leg. So I want you to see this variation here. Now normally, when people are doing the lunges, they go down and they come up. But there are some people that bring this foot back a little bit so that when they go down, their knee starts to go past your toes, right? So now it's not really a 90-degree anymore. It's a little bit less than that. And then when they stand up, they come back up. Now some people say, oh, this is incorrect. You're not supposed to do it that way. It's not incorrect. It's just a different focus when you're doing it that way. So when I do it this way, where you see the knee starts to come forward, my foot's still flat on the ground and I'm still gonna push from my heels. What happens now is that when I'm pushing from my heels, I'm loading the hip. So the hip now starts to feel it more than where before it was just the quads or the back of the leg. Now I'm loading the hip because of this change in angle of the front leg. So this is another way that you can execute the lunges. It's not wrong, it's just different. Another variation is where some people usually will put this foot further back. So this one might be at a 90-degree, but then this one isn't at a 90-degree. You can see it's more than 90 degrees where they have it back here and they come up. The only issue I have with that particular one is that when that foot is all the way back there, there's no guarantee that your hip is in a stable position, because when you're back here and you go down like this, but your leg is all the way back here, you're starting to put a stress here on the hip flexor, which is helpful to stretch it. However, you don't know if your hip is actually in a neutral position. It's different if I squeeze my glute and I squeeze my abs like this. Now if I do that and I come down, now I'm gonna feel a much deeper stretch here. Most people, when they're performing the lunge, are not doing it to stretch this. They're doing it to perform the movement to strengthen the lower body. So lots of times when people are putting their back legs so far out, they're usually stretching it, but they're shifting or they're encouraging their hip to not be in a proper placement. So it's usually not neutral, it's pushed back more. So now your hip is like this when you're doing lunges instead of it being in a proper position. So I don't necessarily recommend putting your leg that far back unless your hip, your core, everything is in a stable position. So be mindful of that if you're doing that. We've got walking lunges or forward lunges. So the forward lunge is where I step my foot forward and I go into the lunge, and then when I come up, bring my foot together, and then I go forward again and I do it again, and then bring my foot together. That's another one. You can do alternating forward lunges. So down, bring it back, down, bring it back. Forward lunges have their own pros and cons. People who tend to have knee issues, forward lunges don't really work the best for them, because when they're taking their step forward, that leg that's in the back, all that weight is in that leg. And if you have knee issues, for many people, it's putting pressure on the knee, so when they come down, they're feeling it all in the knee. So when you can't do forward lunges, you can do reverse lunges. So reverse lunges is where you step the foot back into it. You can alternate with the other foot back. Now this is helpful, especially for people who have knee issues, because when I'm stepping my foot back, the weight is on my front leg. I can keep the weight in my heels, which doesn't put any pressure on my knee. So as I step back, weight's in my heels, step the foot, and then I go down into it, still keeping the weight in the heel, and then bringing it back up. So only that front leg gets the weight, as opposed to when you're doing a forward lunge, the back leg is getting all of the weight, and usually it's shooting straight for the knee. One more variation, side lunge or the lateral lunge, where your feet are wide and you go to one side like this, where both feet are still facing forward, but you just go to one side. So I'll face you and down, and I kind of perform somewhat of a squat, a one-legged squat here, while that other leg is still facing forward. So this is the side lunge or the lateral lunge, where you can also perform as well. So I hope that works for you guys. That was how to do the lunge. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. And remember, you max your life.